Hello, hello, and welcome back. I am so excited. It's been way too long, but I am joined by my beautiful friend Tiffany, and we are doing another view from the roof, diving in specifically today very much into the mother wounds and kind of lower feminine energy and how that's impacting us, and specifically with the collective. So, Tiffany and I have been talking about this behind the scenes, but I'm going to hand it over to her um, to kind of start off with like what even what your download was maybe, or what prompted some of this topic for you.
Yeah. Um, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tiffany Calhoun. I help souls get back into alignment. I do this through a variety of modalities such as Akashic Records readings, breathwork, Reiki, and women's retreats all over the world. And that is actually how I met Kara through the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so through happenstance, I was asked to guide a breathwork um, to a group of it's called Inner Bloom Wealth and Wellbeing Academy. It's about 4,000 women worldwide who are really looking to grow spiritually and financially through learning tools and practices and rituals that help them grow in abundance. Um, and I was asked to lead a breathwork. I could pick the topic, and what really came in spirit was like the mother wound. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what does this have to do with wealth and well-being? But we're gonna go with it. Um,
Mhm.
Spent some time over the course of like the month ramping up to the breath work, really meditating on what it was gonna look like and feel like. And let me tell you, nothing that I had planned for happened. It was an absolutely insane portal that was opened. And essentially I was supposed to host it on the 15th of June. And I logged on with the woman who created the academy. We did a sound check. She started inviting people into the Zoom. Kara was on the call, and suddenly my computer screen went black. I couldn't see
Mhm.
anything. I could just hear people. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of resistance. And you had
Mhm.
actually messaged me. You're like, I do not want to do this breath work. And
Mhm.
Sammy had said the same thing. And also another friend of mine who was coming messaged me privately and was like, I really have so much resistance against doing this breath work today. And I was like, oh boy, like what is happening?
Mhm.
Here I am, like so excited to lead this because I have been, seeing and feeling and like knowing what needed to be cleared. And we pushed pause on the breath work. I got to explain to the women on the call like what my breath work is like, what it happens during it, and all that can come, all the shifts that are available to you afterwards. A really emotional call. And we decided to
Mhm.
host breathwork the following weekend. Okay, so this whole week goes by, still so much resistance in the field. I hop on the call with all my notes. I'm ready to go. And I do a sound check, and still the first three songs, no
Yeah.
music
Mhm.
playing. And then somebody was like, are there songs supposed to be playing? And I'm like, I did a sound check and everything. I'm in the zone. I'm feeling the energy. I'm like guiding people through the breath. I'm doing my
Yeah.
thing.
And like you were hearing the music, right? Like you.
Yeah, right on my end. And I even had on the top part, when you go on Zoom, there's an option to share your screen. And when you want to play, when you want to play music with like a microphone, I want to be careful how I use like my hand motions for that one. You have a microphone and it's plugged into the side of your computer. There's a very specific option. You have to hit share computer audio. And it's
Mhm.
sharing computer audio.
Mhm.
I could hear it but me.
Yeah, because I missed the day you actually did it. Because I was what did I text you the next day?
Fully resistant.
Oh,
Mosquitoes.
yeah, mosquitoes.
Yeah.
No, no. I listened to it. I missed it live and I listened to it the next day. or a couple days later on the recording. But yeah, I was sitting outside getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. So then I was like, "Okay, this isn't working." But even before that part, yeah, the level of resistance I felt, and not even from me, because I feel like I've had like quantum leaps and stuff with my mother wounds, and even with intergenerational stuff to my grandma since February. I think we've kind of talked on it on one of the last videos, but so much has healed for me in that realm. But it was like the energy of resistance just in the energy, the collective energy of like that container. I could feel, I just, it was like intense. There was like nothing. It was so heavy. It felt like there was no movement with
It
it.
was the most intense energy field I've ever been in. So
Wow.
I had said I needed to write like the types of mother, the types of experience, and then also like what characteristics that plays out with. So if you have
Hmm.
a narcissistic mother that is, playing head games with you, that, you're here basically to like prop her status up, or like you feel like you're just like this handbag that she carries around and brags about and all
Hmm.
this energy from other people. Or she's a rageful mother and you find yourself walking on eggshells so much. And like, how does that play out later in life when it's that
Hmm.
situation? Like when you're getting raged at as a child, you tend to become like a fawn response, like people pleaser. You are just, yes, ma'am. Like, I don't want to get yelled at. And I don't
Hmm.
know why I say yes to things. And then I find myself going down like choice points throughout my life of like, how did I get here? I'm 20 years into this career. I'm 20 years into this relationship. But how did I get here? Because I said yes to the wrong person.
Yeah,
But
or totally avoiding any kind of challenge, or yeah, so then you
yeah,
just like pull away because you're afraid of what the response could be.
yeah, and oftentimes with like narcissistic mothers, you're not able to form like normal bonds with people later on in life because you never
Mhm.
have like a nurturing and empathetic bond with your mother. So then you mimic that with your partners, and then you wonder why you're choosing men that are cheating on you or abusing you or whatever
Mhm.
it is. And it's just like pathways that were created. So
Mhm.
the most intense energy field I've ever been in. And I knew immediately that I needed to, like, I called upon all the galactic and cosmic divine mother energy, like, of all
Mhm.
time, like, all pantheons that
Mhm.
exist throughout all dimensions of the highest healing frequency, like mother goddesses that we don't even know, can't even
Mhm.
comprehend.
Mhm.
All invited them in. Archangel Raphael, Archangel Michael, like protection energy, and set this like really strong boundary around the work that we were going to be doing. And then I felt like this vice just like clamping my heart. And so as a reflector, I feel in my body what I have to clear
Mhm.
in the field. And the way I clear it is through energy work with my words and my intentions. And I know that sounds really weird. The imagination is your playground for
Mhm.
healing. And we know
Mhm.
that the quantum field, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just comes reality. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so like it's like this painful clamping. Like I almost like I thought I was short of breath. It was the most
Mhm.
intense heart clamping I've ever experienced. And then it went into the throat. And at one point on the call, I was like, okay, if this was not your childhood, if I did not just describe your childhood, please just fill your heart with love and compassion and fill the field with that for all women who are listening to this because it's
Mhm.
really needed. Um, and then after I led them through a couple clearings, um, I was guided to lead them into their records, into an Akashic healing
Mhm.
temple, and surrounding them with the divine mother goddess energy again, calling in
Mhm.
and Isis and Mother Mary and Kuan Yin, and all the all the ascended masters that are just existing in the unconditional love field. Um,
Mhm.
Upgrade and a healing and a download. And while they were receiving their download, I received mine. And it was such a gift. And it was so when we think about, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
When we think about
Let's hear.
how the 3D patriarchal matrix holds us into like looking externally for our solutions, looking externally for love, worth, God, right? Like all of these things, we look externally for it. And that's like the inverted patriarchal matrix, like keeping us playing small. And since since the matriarchy was overturned, essentially, the toxic feminine rose up as a way of like protection, of
Mm-hmm.
surviving. But now we're not like running from armies, and we're not even like like having to clean our own water anymore, or like making sure that our babies are surviving, because like, you know, modern times, like they just are. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anywhere to like throw this toxic energy of like survival. And the toxic feminine actually works in conjunction with keeping the inverted patriarchal matrix like over us. And so
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like the field of resistance that we were feeling, it was like the entire 3D matrix trying to hide this healing,
Mm-hmm.
break through this, because the mother puts that into us. And
Mm-hmm.
then like stuck in this field because of the wounds that we take on from our lineage through her. And so it's a commingled toxic
Mm-hmm.
relation. It's like the source point where they broke off from, and they're now working in tandem to keep us stuck. And everyone's like, oh, fuck the patriarchy. Well, no.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the patriarchy, it's like toxic feminine hand in hand with the patriarchy. That was
Yeah. Yeah. And like I know from my own experience and really working with like clearing out those lower level energies of masculine and feminine, and like over the years of doing that, I realized how they like how much they the cohesion they have together, because it is like you said, almost like the lower feminine energies rose up to try to defend or fight back. But then it became like that shame and that judgment and that guilt and the belittling and like that kind of energy. And we can think of like the most wounded women in our lives, and everyone watching this or listening to this has probably experienced someone who's in that place, right? And it's like just her own feelings of being small and her own unworthiness or insecurities that are now being projected outside. And the easiest place for women to direct that was towards the patriarchy and towards men for a long time. Um, and yet it like does, it's like this the way I see and feel it is like a cloud or like a cloak almost, and it's just weighing down. So we have like structures and systems that have been built negatively from patriarchal things, and they're in place and they're not serving humanity. But then the judgment and the shame and those projections from the wounded feminine, it's like a cloak that almost like pulls it all down and adds to it. And it's just crazy because you're like, this is not the divine mother. Like, this is not the unconditional love or the point of all creation at all. So they are like working in tandem to keep people trapped, really, and keep us stuck in that inverted system.
yeah. And all came crashing down and made so much sense in that moment. And then like the realization of these toxic mothers raising another generation to be toxic and keep it
Mm-hmm.
paying forward, so to speak, like the worst way possible. And, you know, the shift in 2012, millennials were about the age where we were starting to have kids,
Mm-hmm.
the older ones, the older ones at least. And we were like, you know, say what you want about timeline shifting or like the Mayan prophecy or the CERN turning on or whatever it was, but like the shift in 2012. And
Mm-hmm.
we moved into this conscious parenting more in the mainstream, less of like the hippies, like the hippie era. They were trying with
Mm-hmm.
the parenting as well, but like conscious and gentle parenting And it's so triggering to our parents. It's so triggering that we want to listen to our children and give our children a voice because
Mhm.
like we were shut down. And it's so beautiful that we have the option to break those chains and to be different mothers and to raise different children. And in real time, like you can witness it happening, but you still have to go back and heal your wounds.
Mhm.
Kids are going to be the kids are so good at knowing exactly what your buttons are, your triggers,
Mhm.
right? And they're going to
Mhm.
keep them until you heal them. But yeah.
Yeah. And if you're not aware of the whole mirroring principle either, because that's part of it too, is um even if kids aren't aware of like and aren't like pushing those buttons, but they're just unconsciously mirroring those wounds back to the parents, until the parents realize like, wait a minute, yeah, this is mirroring something within me. It's not the kid, like it's not the child that needs to behave differently or that um yeah, needs to be in trouble or reprimanded. It's like, wait a minute, this is bringing up something within myself to look at.
Hmm. Like just
Mhm.
a simple example for you, like if I get attitude from one of my children, I immediately check in on all of the points of homeostasis in their body. I'm like, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need
Mhm.
tired? Like I check in to make sure that they're okay in that moment. And no one ever did that for me. Like I moved right
Mhm.
into mode at 6 years old. No one ever questioned like if I was in a bad mood or hangry, like, do you need something right now? And like
Mhm.
do that to my children, it was always very triggering, especially to my dad. He was like,
Mhm.
he shouldn't be treating you like that. And I was like, are you hungry? And he's like, I need a snack. I'm like, okay, let's get you a
Mhm.
snack. Like instead of like the boomer, like let's yell at them and let's keep the problem going, you know? But
Mhm.
yeah, like we have this point where we're all changing. And
Mhm.
I'm really excited for the future of like mothering here. Um, but it was so powerful because some of the people that were listening in the replay were telling me that even though they like weren't imagining other sisters on the call that needed like their heart filled with love, they were sending that back to their mom and their grandmother.
Mhm.
They're bringing them into the space. They're being led to like heal like ancestral wounds through the breath as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what's so beautiful. Again, both of us know that and have experienced it, but like when you're working with subconscious stuff, when you're working with energy, when you're connecting quantum field, like you really can bring in any aspects and like any people or circumstances and that's even when I was listening to the replay, I wasn't obviously in the group with everyone doing it at the same time. And a lot of the things you were bringing up weren't things I had experienced or that I still had wounding towards, but the ability to know that I'm consciously sending loving energy to like any women who have experienced those things and to know that in the quantum realm, that is how it works. So, like, I can send it out and it's going to be rippling out across time and space to activate or to support whoever needs it. Um, it just felt like such a beautiful way to still be connecting with one another, even though I was doing it by myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day with like the intention going out into the quantum field. And the wild thing that happened when I did I'm in your union
Mm,
QH bundle.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm a bad student. I skipped ahead. I didn't
Oh no.
listen to the talk track. I just skipped right into the meditation. And like during the meditation, I had all these like realizations about the toxic feminine and
Mhm.
how feminism, what did I say it was doing? Oh my gosh. I went on and on. And
Mm.
realized
Realizing yeah, you said how you were in tears because you were like, I've just realized again, or like been reminded of like how toxic the whole feminist movement was and looking down on men instead of realizing like all the incredible things that they do and all the amazing ways they support us and how deeply needed they are on the planet. And yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing with the feminist
Mhm.
movement, right? Is like it's gotten taken to another extreme because of the underlying agendas and everything with it. And it's like, no, we actually really need men, and
Really
like we
do.
need yeah, like we need them to be loved and nurtured and supported in their roles and in helping build something different. But the lower feminine can't see that because she's like so stuck in her pain body.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then I went back and I listened to your talking points before the meditation. I was like, oh, you said all of this, and then you
Mhm.
read your quantum hypnosis, and the intention of, exactly what you just shared came through, even though you weren't saying it during the quantum hypnosis, you were doing other things. We were going into our queen energy and all of this stuff. And like
Mhm.
the intention that you set from that talk track came through the bundle because you laid it out in the quantum field. And it's so
Mhm.
powerful. And yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah, you hadn't even like listened to it yet, but you were picking up on the frequency of it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun how that works. Mhm. Yeah, and I think like mm, it's so interesting because we've all been wounded by our parents. Like, I don't think any single person on the planet, no matter what generation, doesn't have some kind of wounding there. Um, I think it's just one thing I find so fascinating because I'm like hyper aware and I'm always just observing everything is just yeah, the different ways that like the father wounds play out compared to the mother wounds. And I think mother wounds, I would say, have gone a little bit more under the radar, especially with women, because I feel like um, a lot of women grow up being aware that maybe they had an abandonment wound with their dad or some kind of father wounding or like lacking the protection or certain things, but they're maybe not aware of the level of feminine programming that they've adopted from their moms. And
Mhm.
it's like so fascinating when you start to become aware of that and you see like it's so deeply ingrained to also be in that victimhood of like really taking no responsibility, and it's always a finger point to someone else or the system or whatnot. And that's not to say that there isn't other responsibilities or other inequalities, but it's just that lower feminine that like drops down and then is like draining and pulling people into it with her, right? And that can be then the narcissist who now is trying to take from someone else to make herself feel better. Like it's just such a weird place to be.
Yeah. If you're raised by a narcissist, I would imagine that you don't even see it.
Mhm,
You have no
mhm,
idea it's like draining or
mhm,
it's not right because they love bomb you and they make you feel
mhm,
like their love is worthy of fighting for. So you're like fighting for it, but
mhm,
so backwards.
mhm,
One thing about the mother wound is no matter what type of mom you had, no matter what response you're in right now, your entire identity isn't.
mhm,
And so
mhm,
it's not like, oh, I went to college and I became a biologist, and now my identity is that I am a marine biologist. It is like everything you fought for, all of your resilience, all of your like personality traits were out of like a need to survive or adapt or accommodate
mhm,
those first 7 years of life. And so
mhm,
they strip that away either in your quantum hypnosis or with breath work, which can be more of a somatic release. Um,
mhm,
then you're left there like in a bag of tears, like who even am I?
mhm.
Like if
Yeah.
I don't actually have to be resilient,
Mhm,
what does that mean for me? do I just
Yeah.
get to be peaceful and magnetic? Like, how do I do that? I don't know how to just lounge in a river and let it take me where I need to go. I need to fight for what I want, like how do
Yeah.
you parts of these that are so ingrained in who you are?
Hmm. Sometimes I feel like the wounded feminine reminds me of like uh, a a like wild animal in a cage that gets backed up and it's like feeling pushed against or taken advantage of all these things over and over again, and eventually it reacts from that defensiveness of it's like this thing like my back's against the wall, I've got nothing else, and so I've got to lash out. And so to be in a state of just like you said, relaxation, peace, receptivity, magnetism, like majority of women I've met struggle with being in that because we've never had it modeled to us. And I'll say for myself, even that's been such a journey this the past 6 months, even of more really wanting to tap into more of that divine feminine energy, and the amount of like uh instability it feels in my nervous system, because my nervous system is like, what is this? I don't know what this is. Like it's not safe because it hasn't been normal.
Mm.
um and it's, yeah, we
Yeah,
wouldn't realize it.
it's like a guitar. You change the note by changing the tension. So like
Hmm.
your nervous system, whatever the tension is for like resilience, really tight. But on that same path, if you loosen it fully, it gets to just flow.
Hmm.
It just, yeah, it takes your body some time to like adjust to the reattunement.
Hmm.
And I always tell my clients with breath work, like, especially if it's a really massive breakthrough, especially with this transformational breath work that I do, like 6 months later, you can be having like a, oh my gosh, like aha moment.
Yeah.
Sweeps you off your feet. Like the integration can take a while, and also that's perfectly normal and fine.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much that needs to clear out of our bodies as well. And so sometimes we'll have it's similar with like the quantum healing hypnosis of like we can have these quick breakthroughs and emotional releases, or right away you're getting these epiphanies and redirecting. Same with your breath work, where like there are big shifts that happen right away, but then like months later you'll have that reverberal effect of like a big shift coming in. um and yeah, and then you're like, whoa. And even to the point before, I wanted to add on of like kind of like what you said, because these things haven't been normalized or because they weren't what we experienced growing up, it's so easy for us to not even realize the unhealthy patterns or like the karmic patterns that are now playing out for us, because it was so deeply ingrained and you're seeing it or observing it every single day, your whole childhood possibly. And then suddenly now you're going, wait a minute, like I'm still doing that. And I've had I actually had like a great talk with my mom about this last week, because I was telling you, I've been breaking like really big karmic patterns in my business, and I was kind of laughing about it because I'm like, okay, when I actually look at it, there were super karmic patterns that I observed from my dad and his unhealthy relationship to his business and overworking and kind of things that, even though I kept thinking I wasn't repeating, when when I actually look at it and I'm like, yeah, you're still kind of doing that and like stuck in some of those underlying things. And then when I look at my mom, and one of her biggest wounds that was always present in my childhood was how small she felt and like how she wasn't seen or heard. And so she had a lot of insecurities, but then that led to that kind of defensiveness back against the wall, and then sometimes judging or projecting that outwards. And then I was like, even though I didn't think I was playing that out, that was still part of influencing even my whole Instagram thing, right? And like the constant trying to be seen on there because it wasn't even me, but it was fueling this subconscious need to be validated that came from upbringing. And and you realize, like you said, the whole ego death of like, wait a minute, who am I underneath all of this? Because this was not my truth. This was all just programming I took on from both of them.
Yeah. And then the program hits, and then the choice points were made. And then you end up years
Hmm.
back like, well, what do I do now? Who am I?
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. I spent like 6 years trying to build my business a certain way just because of these wounds.
Yeah.
Because actually, like, my core self didn't really desire those things at all. And that's why now I'm like, I'm grateful for it and I can see it and I can shift it. But that's why that inner work is so important, because if we don't ever uncover it, um, I would have ended up just like my dad, where 20 or 40 years down the line, I'd still be in a business that's misaligned, or now I'm doing it to please someone else, or I'm fighting the voice thing connected to my mom, right? Um, and it's like you can understand why these karmic patterns repeat, though, until we actually clear it from the subconscious, the energy, and the physical. Like that somatic release that you mentioned is so needed to repattern it out.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about if you were to repurpose your computer, like
Mm,
refresh and pass it on to somebody else, you're still
mhm,
keeping you're still keeping the Word document, like Word file, like
mm.
program on there. You're still keeping like Excel program on there. Like all of these programs stay on it. It just gets passed down. And it isn't until you like break the chain and say, no, I'm not, I'm just deleting this whole thing. I'm kicking it
Yeah,
out. I'm rebooting and I'm starting fresh.
yeah.
It's a
Full like full system reboot, or like I'm buying a new computer. Like I'm just starting from square one, and like, but doing it from this version of me and like this sense of self.
yeah. Um, the mother wound in itself, like when you hear it out, like, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to do these things. I wanted to take these what are they called? Like pop culture catchphrases that all of these like healers and Instagrammers and stuff are throwing out there that have
Mm,
just been so like watered down and weakened. And it's like, oh,
yeah.
feminine embodiment and like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
divine masculine and like all of these inner child healing, like all of
Mm,
these catchphrases. And I wanted to
mhm,
make a healing pathway for them that
mhm,
could actually make sense of it and clear it from your system for good. Um, so I thought, okay, well, let's do some inner child healing because it's summertime, especially in like the northern hemisphere.
mhm,
And like, what are the components of like a broken inner child? And immediately it was like mother wound. And then like that sisterhood or like the societal persecution
mhm.
as like the
Yeah.
second life. And then like ancestral programming of like what's come in. So I guess the desire to start with the mother wound was like pivotal in healing the inner child. And I still have work to do. We all still have work to do. Like I want to get more play going. I want to feel less like I don't know, like I have this weird feeling when I actually play and dance that like
Mhm,
people are watching me. Like, and that's not true. Like, I always tell myself like, no, nobody's watching. I can
mhm,
dance watching, but I get nervous and I don't like break out of my shell.
mhm,
That's something that I definitely want to go deeper on. But like all of these aspects of like the inner child that need to be healed in order for us to really live fully, like all of that's available.
mhm,
And like you have all those quantum bundles.
mhm,
And then like Inner Bloom has all of these other modalities to heal it. And
mhm.
there's breath work and there's Akashics and there's I don't know, like probably
Yeah.
just get it out of your body through ecstatic dance, all these things. There's so many.
Yeah. I feel like nowadays there's like literally infinite access to clear
Mhm.
these things. And so really all it takes is you deciding that like I don't want to continue whatever pattern or whatever struggle I'm in, and then following what feels most exciting. Because I think of even so much of when my journey started, um and I kind of started all the deep healing and started with just like basic meditation and mindfulness after Derek passed away, and it was like I just kept following the next modality that brought some excitement or kind of made sense to me at the time, like something that clicked, and they all brought such powerful shifts for each level of where my consciousness was at and like what I was available to. Um, but really, like, I don't want to say there's no excuse because I don't want to be adding to like a shaming energy, but it's just like there is no excuse if you're wanting to make positive changes because there is so much available that can help you do that. And I think that's what's so beautiful and so empowering is that we have the ability, we have the tools, and we have the capacity like within our whole self to just shift it. So it is kind of just that commitment to do it.
Yeah. I do feel though that for some of these deeper wounds, you really have to get past the ego and into the subconscious.
Definitely. But I mean that depending where you're at, you might not be ready to start
Right.
there. Like I remember hearing about Reiki and energy work, and I just thought it was the stupidest thing ever when I first like I was
Yeah.
so closed off to some of that, or even hypnosis. I had like listened to hypnosis tracks, but it was like the stubbornness in me that almost wanted to prove it didn't work, right?
Mhm.
You know, and like we've both seen this where sometimes the ego feels so strongly identified with something that it doesn't want, like it's almost like a wall gets put up or a barrier. It doesn't want that to be shifted. And that's where I found like some of those baby steps and other tools were needed to kind of get through that beginning stage. And
Mhm.
then you could go deeper in and like really blast it from the subconscious.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like your last 5 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But not like your mother would make you feel like you have to take those last 5 pounds off. It's your choice.
Yeah, you're doing it. And you're doing it from like joy and excitement and bettering yourself. And
Wondering what it
uh,
can be like.
yeah,
Yeah.
knowing it's possible. I heard this great quote the other day of um or like a study around people who wanted to quit smoking, and they had like the two study groups basically, and like half of them were wanting to quit because they felt shame and guilt around the bad habit, and the other half were wanting to quit because they just wanted to feel good and like to feel healthy and that positive desire. And it was something like, you know, 90% of those who had the positive drive actually succeeded and quit smoking and stuck with it, whereas like those who were trying to do it from shame, like they maybe they'd succeed for a moment but then they'd fall back. Or and such a cool little side note of just like making the changes for yourself for the positives and like to feel better, and not because you're guilting or shaming yourself for where you are now, because then we're still like stuck in that energy too.
Yeah. And that's like a primary response to the mother wound, that guilt
Yeah.
and the shame for like a behavior that becomes a conditional love. And
Hmm.
that's like when you think about the core wounding of the mother, it's conditional love.
Hmm.
Conditional
Yeah.
love is based on whatever aspect of motherhood she mirrored for you.
Hmm.
And the answer
Yeah.
is always unconditional love.
Hmm.
Honestly, is as simple as that. Any
Yeah.
moment that you can move yourself towards a field of unconditional love, you're going to find healing and you're going to find peace and your
Hmm.
can reset.
Yeah. And it's like um that perfectionism even, which comes from it. I was gonna ask you that when you mentioned the inner child and the dancing and the kind of thoughts of like, is someone gonna be watching or judging? And like I was gonna ask if that felt connected to perfectionism for you, or like a thing from your mother of like, we always have to be perfect and you always have to look a certain way and be presentable, and like heaven forbid the neighbors see you looking like this, right?
No, my mom was not like that. My
Mm,
mom was, my brother was so bad, so
mm,
bad. He's a projector, but he's like
mm,
awesome. And I was like her saving grace. So I had
mm,
to be like the angel child. If there
mm,
was any moment of like rebellion or like not getting straight A's or not getting into every college or not succeeding
mm,
in life, it was a direct reflection of her inability to parent.
mm. Yeah. So still a perfectionist, like an expectation from her.
Yes, it
Um,
was an enmeshment.
mhm.
She's
Yeah.
tying she's tying her like capable parenting
Mhm,
skills to my success.
mhm. Yeah, which I think is like very common for that kind of generation, because so many of them, their whole identity became in their mothering, and so everything their child did, they took on as like a reflection of them.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild though, interesting. But yeah, the ability to then like love ourselves through all of it. And as you were saying, like if it came, if the wounding is based in conditional love, then all we need to do to heal it is give ourselves that unconditional love, right? And being able to, I know for me, like being able to hold myself through things and go, you know what, even though these things happened or these mistakes were made or you felt this way or done these things, like how can I unconditionally love where I was at that time and whatever I was going through that caused me to react that way. And then how can I now move forward knowing what I know now and like lovingly grow, instead of, definitely years back at the beginning of this journey, it was still like a judgment to myself for those things, which then was the conditional mothering coming out, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm,
like when you think about the emotions and how emotions can move out into a behavior, um,
mm,
like identifying whether it's like sadness or anger or whatever it is, you might be thinking that that's what you're feeling, but it's exhibiting itself as um, fighting or isolation or talking back or like hermiting or something, like, you know what I mean? So like
mm-hmm,
you can look at all of the pieces of you that feel a little bit uncomfortable and off and feel like it's part of your coping mechanisms. Like we can kind of identify that on our own. We would say like, okay, I have self-sabotaging behaviors.
mm-hmm,
Like, okay, let's go into that a little bit further. What am I doing exactly? Like, are you
mm-hmm,
binging? Are you avoiding? Are you procrastinating? Like those are all self-sabotaging behaviors, right? You go into that a little bit further and you realize like the procrastination is coming from like a fear of not wanting to do it wrong. And that's coming from like, I guess that would be fear, right? Total fear. Or like
mm-hmm,
shame is really like a desire to be seen at your fullest and accepted for that.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like unconditionally love for who you are at your fullest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Which at the end of the day, then it's like, how can we just how can we just love ourselves and see like where these things came from, but realize we're not that, or we're not those things. Yeah. And I think releasing that perfectionism, which hopefully every generation is getting better, because if we're stepping more into the age of like honoring authenticity and realizing like my magic and my areas of expertise and everything are going to be different than everyone else's. We don't need to compare, and
Mhm.
I can just show up and be me, then yeah, it kind of already alleviates some of that pressure and stress too. And then everyone just gets to start embracing like, this is me. This is who I am.
Oh my God, can you imagine like a little new earth of everybody just in their authentic self and just like
Mm,
everybody's earning an income based on something that brings them joy. And
mhm. Yeah.
just get to walk around with smiles on her face all the time and there's no crime.
Yeah. Everyone's just like so happy and like so aligned. I really think that's what we're meant to be, what's meant to happen. I see it.
I see it too.
Mm, yeah.
I know.
With all of that said, let's share the couple different things. So I have different quantum healing hypnosis bundles, as Tiffany mentioned. One of them specifically is very much about like mother wounds, father wounds, inner child work, really clearing out relationships to the lower masculine and feminine, because these are things that not only get imprinted into your subconscious, but almost if you imagine like your energy field, like they can kind of plant in or impact your energetic signature. And these lower level templates can keep us stuck and really do just keep holding us back. So, this is a huge thing I do inside Connect, and I will drop the link for that down below. And then, Tiffany, do you want to share? Because this breath work is so powerful, the one you've been talking about today, as well as like where people can access that and continue if they want to do more of that somatic release.
Yeah. So the style of breathwork that I lead helps your brain release DMT, which is the psychedelic component found in ayahuasca too. Our brains actually produce that naturally through this exaggerated breath. And so it takes you on this like journey through the subconscious mind. And that's how I can do a lot of the subconscious reprogramming that I do. It takes you into a hypnosis state with the breath work. And then it's, kind of like acted upon by this, this molecule of DMT to really help to shift and rewire the brain. So a little bit different modality than what Kara does, but they work beautifully together. So
They do.
type of thing where you could pick up one of my breath works and then pick up a
Mhm.
bundle. So the mother wound breath work is available on replay in Inner Bloom, which is Women's Wealth and Wellbeing Academy. When I complete the series of this healing pathway, all three, the mother wound, that persecution sisterhood wound, and an ancestral clearing, a deep meditation in the Akashics to help you kind of release that from your ancestry completely, forward and backward, 7 generations. The whole bundle will be available for $222. If you join Inner Bloom, though, there's a huge discount, so it's kind of worth it.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's so much other amazing content inside Inner Bloom. So, and like a community, all these different things. So, probably like best value is jumping in that, right? And getting it, and then they get the replay immediately anyway.
Yeah, they get the replay immediately. And
Mhm.
my replays are never available for more than 7 days. So it's really rare that it's going to be available for a lifetime there.
Yeah, yeah. Which like I'm excited about because I didn't end up going back. I had like all that resistance, all the mosquitoes, and then I was like, okay, so I need to actually maybe this weekend, because I'll have time, I can go back and like go through the full thing. But already in that process, it was definitely helping clear and shift like some little remaining things and connecting dots, which I didn't share, but yeah, big dots of like things I had learned from my mom, but I was able to see like directly how it was from my grandma to my mom. And it
Mhm.
was really helpful for me to shift those things because, yeah, like bringing in at times where I had been more frustrated or annoyed at things like my mom had done or said, and knowing the way that it impacted me. And then to feel this connection and see like she was just repeating something from my grandma, or she was trying to do the complete opposite from my grandma, but it wasn't aligned for me. And so it still created an impact, and being able to kind of heal and release across the generations and just be like seeing that everyone was doing what they knew at that time. And again, as we talked about, just like the lower feminine and that heavy programming that had been playing out that I wouldn't have been aware of as a little girl. Like I didn't know what
Yeah.
the feminist movement had programmed into different people or any of it, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the wildest part about the breath work is when you go deep, you have these amazing visuals, knowing
Mhm.
like realizations. It really is like it can take a meditation. Like if you struggle with meditation, you're like, I never see anything.
Mhm.
You have a really good modality because it inevitably you go into this deeper state of hypnosis um very quickly. So
Mhm.
so the mother wound breathwork was kind of modeled upon the breathwork that I did for you uh
Yeah.
early in the springtime. And that
Yeah.
was kind of set you off a little bit
Yeah.
fully activating.
Yeah. I forget what month we did that in, and I think we might have talked about it. Did we? But
Wow.
it's been so long since we've done one of these chats, so I can't remember. But it was, yeah, because that was definitely I was shifting a lot with like honoring who I truly am and releasing conditional love, conditional pieces that I had experienced from my mom, where even though she loved me so deeply and she would say that she loved me unconditionally, but then you'd hear like a judgmental comment towards not even necessarily towards me, but towards someone else, or and then there became all these boxes and all these limits of me filtering like if I'm not in these things that she's said, I'll be judged. Like if she's judging them for doing something and I want to be doing that, then I can't do it if unless I want to sacrifice the love of her, right? Or the relationship or and that was so big for me because um and that's actually what's been for the last like few months is like she's actually with my grandma passing. I feel like it released so much pressure on her and so many of the like ties that had kind of been hooked in from how my grandma was, and like the softening for my mom more into like this feminine unconditional loving energy, and the way she's now supporting and embracing even deeper. She always had, but like it's been so beautiful to experience that and to feel like now, yeah, I can like fully embrace all these aspects of me and I'm not afraid or ashamed or worried that it won't be received. And yeah, I would say your breath work as well as like some of the other things I was doing at that time and divine timing for sure with like all the things playing out. It's been so big.
Mhm.
Mm.
And also just the important reminder that like when you have these realizations in mother wound clearing, like you're an adult now. You can change that relationship through simple conversation. And
Mhm.
if it doesn't change for the positive, even that release of like the expectations or like, you know, just the conversation to help
Mhm.
heal. Some people might choose to move on from a relationship. Some people might choose to shelf a relationship, but it can be done in like absolute authority to self instead of like weird emotional enmeshment.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think every person's going to be unique, and that's one thing I want to mention before we wrap this up is like just the ways that like everyone's contracts with people are going to look different. So um like I never like to promise that, oh, you do these hypnosis and you're going to heal your relationship to your mom. It's like we can't guarantee how the other person's going to react, or like, oh, you're going to heal this thing with your partner or your ex. Like anyone who's promising those things doesn't understand like free will, doesn't understand soul contracts, all these different things that are playing out. But what is guaranteed is that if you heal these things within you, you show up differently. And
Mm.
so, yeah, as you just said, like it could be just the fact that now you're empowered enough to have the difficult conversation or to take up more space instead of reverting back into like the little child who's afraid of being reprimanded, right? And when you show up in that new way of being, then it gives them an opportunity to show up differently.
Mhm.
And sometimes that creates a reverberation and a little bit of a push away and maybe some negative emotions at the time because it's new and unexpected. But I've also seen how a lot of times people grow together and it creates such beautiful opportunities for more of those positive conversations and positive shifts to take place. So you really have to be open to knowing like you still can't control the other person, the outcome of it, but you're able to shift how you show up.
And how you see things, your lens clear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which
Beautiful.
immediately shifts it too, because then again, you're not like whenever I was focused on the negatives, in my mom or my dad, like I just created more of it because all I was doing was focusing on that specific response and how it made me feel or whatever. And like the energetic charge was just building and building more and more. And like when I started clearing that away, clearing the lens, healing some of the past memories and healing the energetic charge around it, it's like you're able to take those moments in totally differently. And even the energetic connection is like being diffused without you even doing anything. So it's
Mhm.
really cool.
Doing the work is cool. All
Yeah. It's so fun. It's so fun.
the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah. Um,
Mm,
thank you guys for joining and thank you, Tiffany, for being here. I'm so glad we got to talk about this and dive into like mother wound and just yeah, the power of these deep transformational healing modalities is really beautiful.
yeah, it's always beautiful to be with you in conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for joining us. As I said before, I will drop the links down below for both the Inner Bloom and the Breathwork with Tiffany and her contact info. I'll also drop for my Connect Quantum Healing Bundle. And yeah, we'll see each other again very soon. And I'm sending lots of love to everyone.
Bye.
Bye.